You're exactly right. You want to train yourself to become tough. And my own personal journey in martial arts was, as a child, I was always the smallest kid. I was always the weakest. I was a sickly little small kid, and I used to get bullied all the time. And I remember making a conscious decision. I'm going to go and learn how to fight, and then I'm going to show these guys what's up.
And in the generation past, we train to become tough.
Yes. You dislocate joints, you tear ligaments, you break bones. And back in the day, there was always this idea of the Budo code, right? The warrior code.
Shake it off.
Don't show anything, right? After the states that were on a couple of, maybe 6-8 weeks ago, we had New South Wales states.
4 weeks ago, yeah.
And I competed, and I should not have competed. I was in a terrible
You were injured,
state.
right?
I was terribly injured. My whole corner of my body was locked tight and in full spasm. I actually threw up.
After the match, during the match.
At the end of the match, I had to look around. I had to actually throw up inside my gi. My mind has been trained to the point to ignore that pain and injuries, but my body could not handle that anymore. You have to learn how to use that will that you've developed, right? The willpower that you developed.
The toughness.
The toughness, right? To be tough on yourself, to learn how to say no to yourself.
I was reading, because with Legacy, one thing that I try to do, I'm trying to, even me jumping on Subversion was to try and become a little bit better. And then I had the experience of working with Grant first, and now, to work with you. So I feel that one thing that even doing this is completely out of my comfort zone, but what I want to get good at is that, communicating myself and my brand and the things around me. Mm-hmm. And so I like to look at people that can do that well and spend time, rub on them a bit, see if it helps, Yeah. But same as we do with jiu-jitsu, same as we do with everything else.
Exactly.
But what I was listening and learning now is like the specialist in marketing and branding saying, the founder or the main person, do you have to be the face of the brand or the voice of the brand? If you are the person for it, yes. Yeah. If not, get other people to be it. You know what I mean? Like, so not but everyone.
You are the person for this brand, right?
I try.
I would agree with that point. Some people should be, some people shouldn't be.
Yeah,
you should be.
No, and I know, and I was in the podcast I was listening. They were talking about several brands that have big names and have like ambassadors that pretty much respond and advocate for the brand. They are the brand. But there's a brand in Brazil that is quite big, and they use these guys that are pretty much not just influencers. These guys have a contract with the brand that they are the brand, for multi-million-dollar contract. And the owners of the company don't even want to participate on interviews or one of these guys that I follow that is one of the main ambassadors of this fitness brand. He wanted to do a part in the channel where he speaks with the owner of the brand, talking about the brand. He said, no, I don't want to. And he said, why not? I said, because I don't want to have to be driving on a bulletproof car. I don't want
doesn't want to be known.
I don't want anyone to know that I'm a multi-billionaire. Pretty much. I want my kids to travel fine. I want my family to live okay. You guys do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
I, unfortunately, not at risk of becoming a multi-billionaire very soon, so I don't mind.
Keep going, man. Foot on the gas. Hey, my granddad always said, aim for the stars. If you land on the moon, at least you got further than anyone else.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that's how I used to say. I used to always say, aim for the moon, and you might just get to pass some stars. It's the other way around. Aim for the stars, and you might just land on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that Marcus Aurelius saying as well, right? The man in the arena.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Right?
The man in the arena is
no,
Thiago
that was Roosevelt.
Yeah. Roosevelt, yeah. Because I know that's on the Legacy website.
Is it?
Yeah, that's on our
Roosevelt,
website, right. and that's something that I always tell, and I before comps and stuff, I always show people. I always read it. I have this for a long time, and before comps, I used to always read it because you get very nervous. And the man in the arena for me was always the pretty much, like the idea of that.
Good mindset.
Well, the only thing that counts is the man in the arena. Everyone outside, the timid souls that will never know victory or defeat, they're just gonna be warm for their whole lives. They're not gonna be hot or cold.
The night before my first boxing fight, I think I told you this. One of the old journeymen who trained in our gym, who I'd never spoken to in the whole time that he was there. I knew his name because every single day he would come into the gym, drop his bag beside the heavy bag, wrap his hands, and then just hit the heavy bag for 90 minutes, unwrap his hands, put it in the bag, and leave again. Never spoke to anyone, never did anything else, just skipped and hit the heavy bag. The night before my first Golden Gloves tournament, he came up to me, put his arm around me, and he said, "Rich, win, lose, or draw, no matter what happens, you will have done something that most men have never done.
Step in.
You've stepped into the ring, and no one can ever take that away from you, no matter the outcome."
That's it, yeah. Jake, you still testing? Aren't you?
No, man, we're wrong.
Whoa.
Hey, hey, and we're rolling.
That's the really cool thing about our podcast. They never tell me when we're on. No, but good.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
But great, yeah. And but in what you're saying, I feel that this is pretty much how you want to do everything in life. There's so many lessons that we get from martial arts or from whatever we do into the real world,
Man.
And one thing that I really want us to start talking about, since I spoke with you about being here, and it's a subject that for me is very, very is stronger now in life. It's in jiu-jitsu how we trained, and in the generation past, we train to become tough.
Yes.
The times were designed in martial arts in general. If either you are in karate, kung fu, Muay Thai, Kyokushin karate, jiu-jitsu, the martial arts were in a way establishing themselves as well, in the world scenario, pre-UFC, let's say, or early days of UFC. And anyone that trained had one goal, there was one direction, which is to become tough. But then we had this really interesting conversation about, all right, you spend most of your life trained to become tough, and it's pretty hard to just untough yourself later, and how difficult it is, and what are the pros and cons,
Yeah, man, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you're exactly right. You want to train yourself to become tough. And my own personal journey in martial arts was, as a child, I was always the smallest kid. I was always the weakest. I was a sickly little small kid, and I used to get bullied all the time. And I remember making a conscious decision. I'm going to go and learn how to fight, and then I'm going to show these guys what's up. And then within, I want to say, 4 or 5 weeks of starting martial arts training, I was like, I don't want to fight anyone. I only want to train and learn how to fight, train. I don't need to worry about those guys anymore. You know what I mean? The guys that were pushing me around and bullying me. And then the focus shifted from them to me. How can I improve myself? How can I become stronger, tougher? How can I overcome my limitations, my weaknesses, my lack of fitness, my asthma, my small frame?
Yeah.
And you're right, man. Just years and years and years of focusing on getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And any little niggle or injury, I was like, okay, that doesn't matter. I have to focus on mind over matter. You dislocate joints, you tear ligaments, you break bones. And back in the day, there was always this idea of the Budo code, right? The warrior
code. Shake it off.
Don't show anything, right? Mm-hmm. I remember breaking my hand, literally tearing the ligament off the bone and ripping off a piece of bone on my thumb, to the point where, if you've ever broken a bone, it makes you feel sick to your stomach, right?
Yeah.
And
I broke quite a few as well.
Yeah. And I remember that feeling of the sick in the pit of my stomach, and I remember really consciously just going, this guy is not going to know anything. He is not going to know that I'm hurt. I can't show any pain or weakness, and then continue to fight, right?
And in a lot of ways, I feel like this is an important quality to develop. It's an important trait to have, but at the same time, it cannot be your only quality. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I grew up the same way with jiu-jitsu training. And out of all the other sports that I did, when I got into jiu-jitsu, imagine I got into jiu-jitsu in '98. UFC 1, Royce Gracie was 93, 94, 93.
Yeah.
So that just happened, and the whole thing is exploding. So for you to train jiu-jitsu, you had to prove that you deserve to represent jiu-jitsu. By that, it means like, if you have to fight to represent jiu-jitsu, if you have to, do whatever it takes to represent jiu-jitsu, it's there. Are you capable of? Are you going to step in? And in training, you tear something, you hurt something, you shake it off, you tape it up, and you do it. And in a lot of ways, it builds resilience.
Yep.
But at the same time, I feel that a lot of injuries that I, slap on my wrist or tap my shoulder and I went again, it may be tougher to. There were diminishing returns to it. It gets to a point that I'm just more broken as well.
Yep.
Because I wasn't smart on recovering, on resting, because that wasn't the cool thing to do. And I feel that where do we draw the line? Not the line, but I think becoming smarter about it. Do you think it's important as well?
Look, I think it's challenging, right? Because I don't know about you, but I'm 55 now, or as Snoop Dogg says, I'm on the 5th floor now.
Yeah.
But I don't see myself any differently. I don't feel any different in myself than I did when I was in my 20s and in my 30s. Like I don't, my inner self doesn't feel any different. I feel like the same. It's
same young soul.
Yeah, but the body doesn't respond in the same way. And whilst that attitude of learning how to fight through adversity and learning how to see pain and even injury as just a sensation that doesn't affect me as a person, right? It does affect my body, but I can keep going. Was a really valuable tool and a very valuable lesson, and important for me throughout all the different combat sports, because I started combat sports in 1988. And I started with karate, moved into full contact karate, then I boxed, did a bit of kickboxing before I found jiu-jitsu. And it was important for me to develop that, but because I don't see myself any differently, it's been really difficult for me to find the line of where those diminishing returns are starting to actually go from being beneficial to being actually harmful for me. And just recently I've had a period of time where I asked my wife, after the states that were on a couple of maybe 6-8 weeks ago, we had New South Wales states.
4 weeks ago, yeah.
And I competed, and I should not have competed. I was in a terrible
You were injured,
state.
right?
I was terribly injured. Like my back was locked up tight. My hip could not move. My back was in full spasm. My entire psoas, lower back, everything, my hip, my whole corner of my body was locked tight and in full spasm. I actually threw up.
After the match, during the match.
At the end of the match, I had to look around. I had to actually throw up inside my gi because I didn't have a bag to throw up into. And I had this kind of cognitive dissonance where I was telling myself, it was probably gastro. It wasn't. It was my body saying,
your nervous system
don't do
crashing
that.
over the pain and the injury and all the inner messages of your body too.
Yeah, because my mind has been trained to the point to ignore that pain and injuries, but my body could not handle that anymore. It was too much, right? I trained too hard. I was training 9-10 times a week with between jiu-jitsu and strength and conditioning, and I was not getting any recovery, and then I go out and compete, and I had a really terrible time with it. And it's taken me quite a long time to try and get back to some kind of equilibrium where I can feel like I can go back to training again. And the big lesson for me is, as we get older, you have to learn how to use that will that you've developed, right? The willpower that you developed,
the toughness,
right? To be tough on yourself, to learn how to say no to yourself. Right? Like I have to learn how to say no to myself. No, don't go to training.
Yeah, true. But in a lot of ways, sometimes I feel in the sport, it's important to have people around us, or trainers, or our coaches, being able to work on that as well. I think it's something that, to a certain level, I had an experience many years ago when I was really young competing, that I used to always do my strength and conditioning with a coach. Not because I don't know how to go to the gym by myself, but I'm not an expert enough that I can train myself to the optimal, performance. And I was competing, full-time professionally, so I needed that to be done. And I changed to one new coach that is an excellent coach in the Northern Beaches. And but he was more PTing people, in just for general strength and gym.
Right.
And he hasn't worked at the time. I think now he works with heaps of athletes after those years, but that was kind of the beginning of him with jiu-jitsu. And a lot of the sessions that I did with him, he put me through hell, and lift and run and this. And a lot of the time I did my sessions in the morning with him, and I went back home and I felt almost like as if I was sick, and I had to sleep all day. I couldn't do anything. And only later on, when I wasn't training with him anymore, that one of my friends that was then training with him said, coach said that you were one of the toughest athletes that he ever trained, that he would add things on top of it and on top of it, and you never stopped, you never gave up. And then I realized that it wasn't because he wasn't hard enough, but he was telling me to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Unless I fall dead, if you tell me do one more, I'm trusting your expertise as the professional that is coaching me.
But don't you think that's like a martial arts mindset as well, right?
It is.
Because that's the student master mindset, right?
Yeah,
Like we put our trust in our instructor that they're going to structure the program and the class and the training for us in a way that's going to benefit us.
And if you hear go one more round or jump or not jump,
Yep.
you listen and you do it.
Especially for those of us that started back in the day, right? Because when I started, you never questioned your instructor. We never spoke. No water, no drinking water, no stopping, no speaking, no questioning. That you didn't even ask how high if they said jump. You just jumped as 100%. High as you possibly could.
And that's where it comes to one part that I find really interesting. So the whole world has evolved. Jiu-jitsu has evolved in a lot of ways for the better, but I don't think 100% of the changes are only for the better. Like now, I believe, even if I consider my jiu-jitsu sessions now, or how I coach, or how our coaches in general coach, I think we train a lot smarter, a lot technically we're developing more than we did ever before. Of course, there's the influence of technology and everything around, but at the same time, we went too far away from that initial martial arts mentality sometimes. So, we have a lot of people wanting to behave like a professional athlete, but without doing half of the things that a professional athlete actually goes through. We question a lot. I always see memes about warm-ups. Oh, does your gym still do traditional warm-ups? You're not in a gym, you're in a cult, or you're in this. Which, when I look at then, that always makes me think. There's the funny side of it, but then when I look at Olympic teams, I love watching on YouTube Olympic wrestling, Olympic judo, and I like watching their training. Those guys are going back to back with their drills and crossing the mats with the same bridges and the same jumps. So they are an Olympic sport. They are exceptional athletes. Are they wasting their time? Or are we in jiu-jitsu just using an excuse to become lazy? We emulate, we want to be professionals by association. We want to hang out, wear the same clothes, wear the cool, funny outfit, and look professional.
I think it's to that kind of like that idea of, when you were a teenager and you had your favorite musician or rock band or whatever, and you started to dress like them, and you started to wear your hair cut like them, and you started to want to move a little bit like them or talk a little bit like them. I feel like what's happened in jiu-jitsu, there's these kind of rock star jiu-jitsu people who are saying silly things just to get traction on the internet, just to get kind of social media exposure, because they're in the business of entertainment. They're in the sport of martial arts in the business of entertainment, and so they're trying to sell tickets and get eyeballs. So they're saying these silly things, and I think a lot of people are kind of looking at them and trying to emulate those kind of cool guys, you know. And part of the challenge is that one of the outcomes of training martial arts in a traditional structured manner is the death of the ego. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You give yourself over to the hierarchy of the organization and the martial art and those that went before you, that are not just the instructor that's standing in front of you that's teaching the class, but their instructor and their instructor's instructor. And you pay homage and honor to the lineage of the martial arts, and that in the process of doing that allows your ego to start to dissolve. It's not just the fact that you get bashed by people every day in jiu-jitsu and there's always someone better than you. That does it. But I also believe that those traditional martial arts structures put the ego in check.
True. And I feel as well, exactly, you know, it could be the case, though, that some of those traditional structures could be a little bit too rigid and not moving as fast as we need for today's evolution. So that's what I feel in between. You know, what is that saying? That strong men make easy times, then easy times make weak men, and weak men make hard times, and the cycle start again. Yeah. What part of the cycle are we now? You know, I believe we could be at the part that, you know,
we're the hard men making easy times.
Well, I feel that this time is the generation that just passed. Yeah. And we are in the generation now that will start making the hard times again, you know, that will make things a little bit weaker in a way. Without taking their credit, because jiu-jitsu, you know, it's, at least in the jiu-jitsu world, technically evolving, it's taking ground so fast. The whole world, you know, is seeing jiu-jitsu, is seeing martial arts like in a completely different way. UFC has taken off, won championship, and you name it. But at the same time, we have that, you know, that part that is going too much towards the attention grabbing.
Yeah, I think you have to like find a way, like if you're an athlete that's competing in jiu-jitsu, you have to find a way to kind of segment those two things as completely separate parts of your journey, right? You have your training, your martial arts training, which is your skill development, your skill acquisition, your mind, your mindset development, and all of that, your strategy, tactics, skill, all of those kinds of things are the martial arts. And then when you go to competition, depending on the format of the competition, you know, you and I have started working together at Subversion, which I was a big fan of. I would go every event. It was my big night out, right? Go and buy my ticket and have a burger and watch people compete. And I want to see them put on a show. I want to see them come out and really like engage with the audience and entertain. I paid however much, $100 or whatever it was for a ticket. I want to get my money's worth, right? I want to have a good, entertaining match. At the same time, that's only 5 minutes of your career as a combat sport athlete. The 5 minutes you're on the mat competing, particularly in a format like a super fight format.
Super fight event, yeah.
That you have to find a way to segment that in your mind, because that's not all of everyday life. You can't train.
You can live like that.
Yeah, you can't live like that. You can't train like that. You know, no one will be successful in martial arts living their training life the way that you should put on a show.
It's like an actor or a circus performer when they are not performing.
Yeah.
They just got to go back and live a life like a normal person.
Yeah, exactly.
And train and get fit or whatever. Let's say you're an actor and you're performing in a movie, I don't know, a drug dealer, alcoholic. Does that mean you're going to live your life now doing drugs and alcohol every day? Well, you're probably not going to get the next part, right?
No, that's going to lead you down a dangerous path. So I think that this whole talk about martial arts, you know, particularly jiu-jitsu and these kind of like, you know, people that are calling it a cult and all of that, and losing respect for the traditions of the martial aspects of it. You know, like you think about the martial arts, it's the art of war, right? And so it has to have a militaristic structure in order to be able to train well. and to be able to understand where you fit in the hierarchy of the room, skills-wise, right?
Of course.
And I think that the value that an individual gets from going through the process of going through the ranks, being a white belt in a room. I've been a white belt multiple times, I've been a black belt started over, become a white belt, black belt, white belt, and the process and experience for an individual of being a white belt in a room and knowing that you are a white belt, that's your place. You are at the bottom of the pecking order. You don't know anything. You're the beginning of your learning journey. And going through that journey and that process to get to black belt, and then being able to be in that position in the room. It's not an ego thing. The hierarchy is not about ego. It's about understanding that I've been through the whole journey from white belt to black belt. I've experienced pretty much what each of you is going through throughout the journey. And as a black belt in the room, you then have the opportunity to lean into your leadership, not from an ego point of view, but from a support and being a good training partner, being a good leader, being an example to the other people in the room.
Yeah.
Right. And this goes to kind of something that we were talking about before, which I think is really important. The idea that you framed it really well once. I think the other day we were talking about this idea of people being black belts being good people or something like that. What was that you were saying?
Well, the thing is, with jiu-jitsu at the moment, there's, I don't even want to take the time to run through them, but there are bad things happening, and people abusing of their power or having an attitude that is definitely not, probably, if you were to ask the question, not approved by 99.9999% of the community population in jiu-jitsu and the world. But if you go back in martial arts, or let's just take jiu-jitsu as our subject. If you go back 25 years ago, 30 years ago, the jiu-jitsu community, or the people practicing jiu-jitsu were a small number. 2004, when I moved to Australia and I participated straight away in my first tournament, there were, I think, 40 to 60 people competing. And there were maybe 2 or 3 of those tournaments in a year. Now there are tournaments almost every weekend, month, and we get tournaments with over 2,000 participants.
Yeah, thousands of people.
And there will be, I think, just AFBJJ in Australia this year will be running over 55 events. On top of that, you have all the other organizations running events with more than 1,000 competitors often. So there's a lot more people participating in jiu-jitsu, which what that means for me is there's so many more parts of the population that now are part of jiu-jitsu. So when I hear people saying, does jiu-jitsu, if you say jiu-jitsu actually creates or breeds good people, you're wrong. This is not true. Well, if you take now in a population of, let's say, a few thousand to now millions of people, and you find a couple of cases or a few cases here and there, that could be large in numbers, but not proportionally to the whole population. And you generalize that in saying that jiu-jitsu now is bad and is creating, is not actually creating good people. In my view, it's an absurd. It doesn't make any sense. I think you are trying to create a,
I think it's a misguided viewpoint, right? Because what people are doing is they're trying to kind of stamp an identity onto, to say that jiu-jitsu does this, or this is in jiu-jitsu. Take 1,000 people. There's going to be at least one shitbag out of 1,000 people.
Always.
Right? Always. Doesn't matter.
The same thing you can apply to any type of group, religion.
Anything.
When you generalize, all people from one religion or another religion are bad. Well, the religions might not be bad, but there are good and bad people, because you're talking about millions of people.
Yeah. And look, now jiu-jitsu's grown so big. So there's two things, right? One, there's a lot more people doing jiu-jitsu, so the potential for a handful of shitbags to come in and be bad actors it's
much more likely to happen.
Well, yeah, it's much more likely to happen. And in fact, it's almost guaranteed. The other thing is that social media amplifies everything so much to the fact where, there's 2 or 3 current cases of
abuse, harassment,
and harassment, and kind of untenable behavior from leaders in their particular environments. But it feels like we're hearing the news stories about them over and over and over again. Every time we open our social media app, there's someone else commenting on it. So it feels much more amplified, right?
But in a way, Richard, I think that's fair enough, because it is a pretty daunting. It's a pretty big thing. It's a pretty bad case. The things that are coming up now, and
Absolutely.
I think people will, more and more. It's a big shock to the community, and the fact that we are talking so much about these cases, and more might come out. I think it just comes to show on how not common it is. Because it's not like, I'll give you an example. I come from Brazil. Someone gets shot, mugged, or stabbed somewhere on the corner of any city. Does it make the news? Not really. Someone is getting shot. I think, go back 15 years ago, the one person used to get violently killed in São Paulo every 4 minutes.
Wow.
That was I don't know, statistics of
Crazy.
15 years ago.
What?
Does that make the news? Now move that to Sydney, Australia. Someone gets stabbed in a suburb somewhere, that it will be on the news tomorrow, because we don't get people getting stabbed
Exactly.
often in Australia. Now it's happening a little bit more, but this a little bit more is still not enough. And I feel in jiu-jitsu there have been some cases of bad things happening, and it's big on the media because it's not the norm. If you take all jiu-jitsu gyms, all jiu-jitsu communities, and you will see what percentage of them have these things happening. I doubt you'll end up with more than, I don't know, hopefully 1 or 2%.
Oh, probably less, way less than that. I think
hopefully less.
One in 1,000 maybe, even less than 1 in 1,000. Look, I think it's good that people call it out on social media, and I think that it's fantastic that social media has the ability to broadcast these danger warnings to the community. What we need to be careful of is this concept that a few bad apples don't ruin the whole bunch, right? That we have to be careful that because there is a handful of bad actors that we are now aware of and should be aware of, doesn't mean that the martial arts don't breed good, doesn't develop good values for people, right? Because I still go back to the process of being involved in the learning journey where your ego is broken down, where you are acquiring skills that are tested in real life situations. Like, jiu-jitsu is the one martial art where it either works or it doesn't work.
There's no bullshit.
There's no, well, this would work if, No, it worked or it didn't work. I broke your arm, I didn't break your arm.
Exactly.
I strangled you and made you say stop, or I didn't,
Yes. And in jiu-jitsu, one thing that I always think, and I think was Fabio Gurgel that was explaining this in some way. I won't use his exact words, but if you see strategy in jiu-jitsu, I'm fighting you. I'm always trying to get to a result, to a common goal. I'm trying to find a submission. I'm trying to pass your guard. I'm trying to get to a point, and I have a plan for it. And you are doing everything in your power to stop me from achieving those things, to creating barriers for me not to get to where I need to go. And now take the word jiu-jitsu and put any other problem you have in life. And it's exactly the same thing you take that into business, you take that into everyday life, take that into all the problems you're doing. And the jiu-jitsu is training us, or training everyone, to deal with problems under pressure, resolving fast. And I feel that that's the skill that we are mostly acquiring there.
Yeah, and look, and to take that a step further, if you're trying to impose your will upon me to achieve a certain outcome, I'm not just trying to prevent you from doing that, but I'm also trying to impose my will on you to achieve my own personal outcome, right? And so that's the battle. And I think, like, my own personal experience I'm so grateful for my martial arts training in life, because over the past few years, I have one business where we've had millions of dollars of government grants to develop some technology. We've had millions of dollars raised from shareholders. And when the pandemic hit, it put a really big impact on our whole business plan and growth strategy, and it completely changed everything in an instant. And as the co-founder and CEO of this company, I've been wholly and solely responsible for the survival of that and the protection of those millions of dollars that people have put into this business to try and create a new outcome. And there were many, many nights where I would wake up in the middle of the night and think, okay, this is it, it's over. I'm going to have to figure out how to call the shareholders and tell them that we've failed. Who do I call first? I would formulate a strategy for essentially the tap outcome. Out, right? The tap. Yeah, essentially, I'm like, okay, I have to tap now. I'm going to wake up in the morning and tap out. And then I would wake up in the morning and the sun would come up and I would be like, this was my thought. I have been stuck in a horrible compromised position, folded and twisted in half under 120 kilo black belts and not tapped. I can survive one more day of this.
Yeah, well, that's the resilience that you want to build from day one. And because you actually have a very interesting beginning of it all. You started initially in New Zealand, and I think you comment to me briefly a little bit on how you got into martial arts, and because you navigated from martial arts, from career, from moving here, from everything else, like you had so many things that made you have to change course and get to where you are here. How do you feel? Tell me a bit on how did that impact, and how did you make your decisions along the way?
I think so. My wife and I have a saying: "Follow the charm," right? And I think one of the ways to describe that in relation to martial arts is when you get into a flow state when you're training, right? That flow state where you're not really
things
thinking,
are connecting.
Everything connects perfectly. You're kind of like. Your next technique is there. You can see it in front of you. It's very effortless to go to it and execute. And you're in the flow state, right? And it's great. And so in the flow state, essentially what you're doing is what we refer to at home as following the charm. So it's that where is the energy flowing? How can I move through this in the most efficient, effective way that is following the flow of the energy? Follow the charm.
Yeah.
So for me, that's, in my life, it's always been that. It's always also been say yes and figure it out as you're going along. And I think that finding martial arts as a teenager, going through, quite a lot of hardship as a teenager in making a bunch of bad decisions and getting into a bit of trouble and finding my way out of that through the discipline of martial arts and the structure of the martial aspect of martial arts is something that I have applied to every single part of my life. And I like to compete, and
very much.
I like it, and I'll compete against anyone. I don't care, And to my point recently, where I was very, very sick and shouldn't have been competing, and I fought the current world champion.
Yeah, and a very little gap on that. I've been using the audio message you sent me about that match because me and Carlos, the world champion that we were referring to, we were good friends, and he contacted me because he's trying to use this year to compete as much as he can. I think because he turns to the next Masters next year, and I think he's considering to have some sort of surgery to, so he said, I just want to go and do as much as I can this year as a personal thing. And he messaged me and say, look, there's not many people, there's no one in my division. I saw there's one of your students that could, move down and be in my division. Do you think you will want to? And at the time, I didn't even know that your back was as bad as it turned out to be. And I'm often having these conversations with some of the students, some of the team members. I was having a conversation with one of our white belts that is going to compete tomorrow, yesterday, about it was a much younger competitor in his division. He wasn't sure. He wanted to pull out because, he didn't want to do that. And we had a bit of a chat. He did one more session. This morning he messaged me, please put my name in. I want to go in. And the audio message that you sent me, a few times I sat with guys with the other black belts, when I asked you if you wanted to go in the division, and your response, was, it will be an honor and a pleasure to be in that division and compete, with one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
And to know that you were saying that from a place of injury and pain and not even knowing if you could perform, but it's one of those feelings like, what a beautiful day to die. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel that if you live like that, these are things that when we go back to jiu-jitsu now and martial arts, these are lessons. I believe our generation maybe had too much of that, and sometimes we paid the price. But what a quality to have, you know what I mean? What a sorry to take a long time there, but I think it was worth mentioning because I use this and I will keep using your attitude in that moment as like, this is it. That's if all you've done come to the moment of being able to do that, you definitely are prepared to achieve anything grand.
Yeah, I think the thing too is like, I'll go back to that old journeyman in the boxing gym, which was, win, lose or draw, no matter the outcome, if you step into the ring to compete, no one can ever take that away from you, the experience, no matter the outcome, because not many people do it. Not many people get to have, to me, that was such an honor and a privilege to compete against someone who's so great. He's won the world, he's the current world champion in that division. Yes, he's a bit younger than me, but whatever, that doesn't matter.
But has a whole career.
Yeah, he's had a whole competitive career. And people always said, oh, Carlos Portuguese, he's got the amazing closed guard. Stay out of his closed guard. No matter what happens, stay out of his closed guard. And I knew that going in, and then he closed his guard around me, and I remember going,
damn.
I remember going, how did that happen? I was not letting him do that. And then it was a magical experience, even though he beat me.
Yeah.
Like the way that he used his closed guard to sweep me felt so effortless. He made me feel like I weighed nothing. And he just swept me and just did. And I was like, man, damn, that's good. I want to learn. I want to do this again, but I want to compete against him healthy.
Healthy, yeah. Well,
but I want to go back to something on that because I think I want to just finish this thought with you. I shared this with my youngest daughter, who we were talking about failure and winning, right? Like winning and losing. And I said to her, just for context, I'm a hairdresser by trade. I've been awarded 5 times Australian Session Stylist of the Year. I said to my daughter, I've lost that category. I've been nominated and not won 12 times.
Exactly.
I won 5. Yeah. She goes, yeah, but you won 5. I go, yeah, but I lost 12.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, but you won 5. And so from her perspective, I'm this guy who's won 5 times in my business career of the top award. But from my perspective, I've lost more than twice as many times as I've won. And I said to her, my perspective when I compete, whether it's in jiu-jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, whatever, combat sports, or whether it's in
anything to do with your
business,
profession as well.
When I compete, I expect to get the trophy. So if I go to compete and I don't get the trophy, I look at my performance and go, what do I need to change so that I get the trophy? What did I do that made me fail? Mm-hmm. And then I adjust that and I go back and try again, expecting to get the trophy. And if in my next attempt I don't get the trophy, I realize that that's 100% on me. I need to adjust whatever I need to adjust so that I can go back again and get the trophy, because I always expect to get the trophy.
Oh, and that's, but look, if we take your analogy now into jiu-jitsu rounds, and I always think like this, my example, let's say I'm playing guard and I'm looking for a triangle setup. I want to get a triangle. I'm with a tough opponent. I'm rolling with someone that I know I cannot make a mistake, and I want that triangle. I start setting up, I shoot a triangle, they defend well. I try to change the side. I try to vary my attack a little bit. And let's say a minute into it, it's not working. One could think, you know what, strategy didn't work. Let's just create space, stand up again, and I'll try to change everything, take this guy down, pass this guy, I'll jump on something. And that wouldn't be wrong. But have I tried enough? This is my A game. This is what I'm here for. Or would I start in the same process? Maybe I'll start trying to unbalance this guy, try to sweep. I'll trick him with other things within my specialty still. Maybe I'll try to cause him to post his hand so I can then attack that triangle again. Maybe I'll initiate an omoplata, see if he posture up, and I can go back to my triangle. And that's where the versatility in the same area, in the persistence. If I have a 10-minute black belt match, it's not wrong for me to put, 7, 8 into what I really believe I can get.
In your A game,
If things went completely wrong, that's when we go to the emergency plan. What else can I do? But I feel that falls into, when you give up your main strategy too early, it's a form of giving up altogether, And I feel like compared to what you were saying, you failed 12 times. Yeah, but you won 5. Yeah, but that's 17 in total that you had to do it to win 5. You know what I mean? When you put the years and time and effort, and sometimes we can measure that in one round. In jiu-jitsu, often when I'm coaching people and they're trying to attack me, they're a lower belt, a white or a blue belt, and I feel that I'm not strongly trying to get out, but they grab my arm and they start going for an armbar. I slowly close my arm a little bit, they give up. Then they put the hand on my collar. I start posturing, they give up. I say, man, and I tell them, you're giving up everything on my first reaction. How about you choose something and you persist a little bit more? But in a world of instant gratification, everything is like you either do it or you just pull out. You just change. Yeah,
I think you can, and you extend that to, like, if you watch high-level competitors, right? Like, say Jacob Rodriguez, for example, in his passing game, the way that he likes to pass using pressure, right? And if you watch him compete, he'll use the same approach over and over and over again in a single match, and he just gets a little bit further each time, a little bit further each time, a little bit further each time, until then he finally gets the pass, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing you're saying, right? Like, it's, if you have an A game, be persistent and try to do whatever it takes. If it didn't work this way, try it a different way so that you get the same outcome. And I think that's what you learn from martial arts, right? Is the persistence and the ability and willingness to fixate on a goal or an outcome and continue to try different approaches until you get to it. And look, for me, that's the big value of training martial arts. End of day.
And you train in martial arts pretty much your whole life.
35 years.
35 years of martial arts. You are a very accomplished hairdresser, an entrepreneur. You are, starting up businesses. You compete jiu-jitsu pretty much full time throughout the year, even when broken and injured. And
even when I shouldn't.
Yeah. So what do you think brings you that drive? Are you just an extremely motivated person, or you think the discipline is what counts, and you don't have the motivation every time you're doing what you're doing? Do you believe like you are? Some guys are just pumped. Sometimes sittily pumped to do things. Or you think, no, I have the discipline, and sometimes I feel like, look, this is not going the way I want, but I just gotta keep going. I made a plan.
Yeah, I think it's that last bit, right? A lot of my friends think I'm very disciplined, right? Because I eat clean, I train well, I run 3 businesses, I train hard and compete. I don't think I'm disciplined. I think I have developed the ability to make a decision and stick to it. And
you're persistent.
I'm persistent. Some people might call it stubborn.
Yeah.
But once I make a decision,
nice.
Persistent's a nicer word for it. But once I make, or if you ask my wife, stupidity. But once I make a decision, in my mind, I've made the decision. So that's it. That's what I'm doing. Right? I'm not flip-flopping. I don't half make decisions.
Yeah.
I don't think,
don't like to be flaky.
I might try that and see what happens, and if it kind of works, then good. I mean, sometimes you might go, I'll try it and see what happens, and if it's not for me. But once I decide. That's it. And I think that, for me, that's what I have learned from the traditional martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Once you decide to do something, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I learned this thing in my early 20s, and it was about willpower and how you can cultivate, develop, and strengthen your willpower. And it goes like this. Anytime you make a decision to do something, even if you're the only person that knows that you made this decision, right? Even if you never speak it out loud to another person, every time you make a decision to do something and then you do it, it strengthens your will. Every time you make a decision to do something and you don't do it, it weakens your will. So for me, I choose not to make decisions and then not do them, because I know that every time I do that, I'm weakening my will a little bit.
And every day when you make a decision again, you know that there is the option to do it and the option to not do it as well.
Exactly.
So as long as the option to not do it doesn't exist, you just got to go through it.
Yeah, and that's the choice that we have. That's the choice that I personally make. And I think if I, like, for example, if I go, you know what, I'm not going to eat any sweets tonight after dinner. That's it. I'm not eating any sweets.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I go and get a little bit of, a little piece of candy out of the fridge and eat that.
Said, oh, not tonight. I feel like it
not
now.
tonight. Then I do it. I feel, because I know that idea of how to strengthen and weaken your will, every time I do that, I know I'm weakening my willpower.
Yes.
And I don't want to weaken my will.
And is there one thing that we started earlier and that connects perfectly to it? So going back to the beginning of martial arts, how things were versus how they are now. And I think we both value this resilience or being tough, because it's a great quality to have. But at times now, it's like we were joking about, you cannot untough yourself. In terms of decision making, 100%, and some people will call being stubborn, are there times that it does work against us, where, for example, depending on the injury, would we be better off, or would you be better off recovering better and not being out for such a long time for something that sometimes wouldn't be worth it, but the tough side makes us do it? Also, after making a decision, we may find that actually this decision wasn't the best decision, but I already made it, so I gotta follow through. How do you think it's possible to find that balance? And that's what I call evolution. We gotta evolve. Where do you see that?
Yeah, do you know what? I think the way that I've started to look at that, because this is the lesson I'm learning now in my 50s, right, is to how to not untough myself, but how to change the way that I do things that maintains my integrity that I've developed over so many decades. And what I'm doing is this, is I'm imagining myself 25, 30 years from now as an elder.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would I give myself now?
Yes.
Right? And it takes a little bit of thinking, because I'm learning how to care for myself and care about myself more now.
It's like your future self give you advice.
Yeah. So I'm asking myself in the future, what advice would you give me? How would future me, elder me, care for me now?
Yeah. So it's like your future self could have said, look, Richard, a lot of your decisions that you followed through, 90% of them, well done, keep doing. But that time that you're broken and you broke yourself more, well, that took you a year out of achieving more goals. Or your future self could say, like those decisions about the candy at night, look, man,
relax,
you know what I mean? Live your life a little bit better.
Exactly. And that's a great example. Because
don't make those decisions. Don't decide I'm not going to have candy after dinner, because if you do or don't,
doesn't matter.
Relax,
you know what I mean? Enjoy yourself. You deserve. So one of the things that future self says to me now is, you deserve a little bit of joy and happiness. Enjoy it. Eat the candy. Have a pizza. Relax. Take a day off training. Yeah. But the flip side of that is that, like you say, I get a lot from jiu-jitsu training, not just the physical aspect of it, but I get to play. I get the physical aspect of having a good hard workout. I get the camaraderie of hanging out with a bunch of people that I enjoy spending time with. There's a unique relationship that you have with people in jiu-jitsu, because I literally, if we are training together, I'm putting my life and health and well-being in your hands, and I trust implicitly that if I say stop, if I tap, that you will stop and not kill me or injure me.
Oh, that for me is the biggest thing.
But that's a unique level of trust between two people, right?
Yes.
There's not many people in the world that you trust that deeply with your physical safety and well-being.
Yes, and there's a side of that I always tell people, like when you train jiu-jitsu, let's say, for me and you to go and grab a casual coffee, we gotta be at least acquaintances. For me and you to spend a weekend or travel together, we have to know each other a little bit more, maybe be friends. For me and you to train jiu-jitsu to the fullest, 100%, like to the death, we have to be brothers. We have to be best friends, because we gotta trust that something might go wrong. At one point, one of us might end up with a split 5 stitches in the forehead. One of us might, lose some teeth. And if that ever happens, we have to know in our hearts that was never the intention of the other person to do it. And if it happened, was a freak accident. That, we will never have
animosity.
A shadow of doubt that the other person would in any shape or form ever intend to hurt you in that way. That's the only way for me that I can train 100%. And that, it's what, when people talk about cross training, I love cross training. I love visiting other gyms, visiting friends here and there. But when I tell people that your training, your main training, your 100% can only happen among the people that you are super close, that you trust and you are good friends, therefore in your team, it's because of this reason. It's the only place that you will be able to go all out and have the same happening to you.
Man, that's a different level of training too, right? Like when I go visit another gym, I always go very light, and I go on the kind of like flow mode.
You got to feel the person, like you said. You got to get into that flow to see how the other person is training. But that takes time.
Man, Monday night, Wednesday night with some of the bros at Legacy HQ. Man, we go after each other like we owe each other money.
Yeah, and that's how it should be.
But you have to have, to your point, it has to be a level of trust like
and friendship,
brotherhood. And that's a really unique thing about jiu-jitsu. And I think that as we get older, we have to find ways to be able to engage in that pursuit so that we get the benefit from it. We get the joy, we get the pleasure, I get the relief. I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better boss, I'm a better worker when I am training jiu-jitsu. And if I don't listen to my body, and if I don't guide myself from the idea of this concept of future self looking after me now, like in the past, my future self was telling me to toughen up, right?
Yeah.
It was guiding me to do those things because that was important. I needed to toughen up. I needed to teach myself.
There was the time for it.
There was a time. There's a season, right? I had to do that. Now, as we get older, and to your point earlier about surrounding yourself with people that you trust, that know you, like I've got Mark Brewer doing my strength and conditioning program. He's an Olympic athlete, a black belt in judo, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and a PhD in sport and exercise science. You couldn't imagine a better person to design your training. Oh. So it's just incredible. I got Felipe, who is looking after my body from a kind of a wellness point of view. And sometimes over the years, I've gone to practitioners to help heal my body, and they go, "Oh my God, stop training," and I'm like, "I'm not going to stop training."
Yeah, I'll stop seeing you.
Yeah, I gotta find someone else to fix me, But having Felipe, like the other week, a few weeks ago, Felipe said to me, "Don't go to training." That was really hard for me to accept,
But if it's coming from who is coming, he understands. That's the one time you don't go training, or that you shouldn't at least.
Yeah.
Or if you go, you don't tell him at least after.
But
that's what I do at least with this.
just don't tell them. No, but I think the thing is for me is like having those people that you trust around you as we get older, finding the people who can support you, that you trust their opinion and their advice and their feedback is really critical to being able to make those good decisions moving forward.
No, 100%. And one closing question I wanted to ask you is, in your sincere opinion, nowadays with everything as it is, does jiu-jitsu still brings the good in people? Would you trust your kids, your grandkids to use jiu-jitsu to, become better people? Or you think our community, our sport is kind of too tainted and it might be going the wrong way?
Oh, without a shadow of doubt, I would have my children. When my children have children, I'll be encouraging them to train jiu-jitsu. Having trained multiple martial arts and now training jiu-jitsu, whenever anyone asks me, I'm thinking about getting my kid into some training or sport, take them to jiu-jitsu. But choose the right gym. Find a gym that has a culture that fosters greatness. Because yes, there are gyms out there, and look, I've got a friend who has a small boy, a 5-year-old boy who is doing jiu-jitsu, and I went to watch him train, my little guy, and I have to say I did not enjoy the culture of the gym that he was training at, and
it can happen as the sport grows,
And so I think that's the thing for me. Does jiu-jitsu make people better? I think the practice of martial arts makes you a better person, for sure, 100%, hands down. Does it by default make you a good person? No.
But
your choices make you a good person. But the practice of training martial arts will make you better at being a human.
Amazing, Richard. Thank you. Thank you for today.
Good chat.
Good chat.
Yeah, I like it.
That was good.
Boss man.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Sweet.
Now, good. I went back and forth on some of the stuff that I was thinking, but I didn't. Man, you really got me by surprise, because we do this the last few ones.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, all right, we're having this chat, and at some point,
I thought you knew, and you guys were already into it. I was like, oh,
no.
sweet.
You know what? Because what clicked to me before I turned to speak with Jake, got to a point that I believe the way you were speaking and like developing your answers a bit more, and I was thinking, man, wait a second, are we on now then? I think we're on, you know what I mean? And then
well, I kind of figured, I was like,